Alrighty, let's get this party started. So the first thing I like to do is remove brake fluid from the master cylinder. This is going to serve a couple of purposes. One is when you depress the caliper pistons back into the calipers, you're going to need the space in the master cylinder for that extra fluid as it backs up into the master cylinder. If you don't do this, it's going to make a big mess. It's going to get all over the floor, and that's not nice. The other thing is, when you go to refill the master cylinder, when you finish with your project, you can add nice fresh fluid to it. So it's just best to do this right off the start. So I'm going to start on the left front wheel here. Doesn't really matter what side you start on, but this is where I have my camera set up, so this is where we're going to start. So the first thing we need to do is remove the caliper bolts, and there's two of them, and in this case they are 17 millimeter. So I'm going to break these loose and remove them. Now grab a screwdriver that you don't care about, and what you want to do here is you want to stick it in between the brake caliper and the rotor and just push back the pistons a little bit so it gives you enough clearance so you can pull the caliper away from the rotor with ease. Sometimes the screwdriver will slip and it could break the tip off. That's why I say use one that you don't care about. And then hang the caliper out of the way so you can continue on with the brake job. Now to remove the caliper anchor bolts. There's two of those, and they're 18 millimeter, and these are going to be a little tighter, so you're going to need a 1/2-inch drive ratchet with an extension, something with a little leverage, because sometimes these can be pretty tight. If you want, you can even cheat and use a cheater pipe on the ratchet to give you the extra leverage. Now for the fun part. You're going to have to hammer this rotor off because it gets stuck on there pretty tight, especially if they've been there a while. So you might want to use some penetrating oil or whatever you have on hand and just really go downtown on this. This is, I took a little shortcut here. You don't see the whole process in this particular part of the video, but I'll show you later on that sometimes they can be pretty difficult to remove. Just hammer away. The other thing you might want to do is place something underneath, because this is going to create a lot of debris that comes off the vehicle. Now for the brake parts. I purchased these from Amazon. They're Power Stop Evolution. They're ceramic pads. Pretty nice little kit. I bought the whole thing. Comes with these are the instructions here if you want to follow those. Pretty handy. It comes with everything you really need. If you open the box here for the brake pads, and the front part of it shows you the break-in procedure, which is pretty nice. And inside you'll see your kit. Come with the rubber boots for the caliper pins, and those are the anti-rattle clips and the brake pads. So this kit's actually very nice. I was very impressed with it. And the rotors are even better. Look at these things. Aren't they pretty? Yeah. So this one that I'm looking at here is for the right front. So what I want is the other one, since we're working on the left front. So pay attention to these because they are labeled left and right. So they're directional. So you don't want to get them mixed up. So the first thing I want to do is clean off the manufacturing oils that's put on the rotors. You can just get some brake clean, spray both sides, wipe them down. You see there's the cardboard that I had laid down to catch any crud that comes off the vehicle. Now just install it. Oh, look at that thing. That looks so pretty when they're new. Another trick I like to do here is I'll put like a oversized nut over one of the studs with a lug nut, and that will help hold the rotor in place. So it makes assembly a lot easier. Now we're going to go service the caliper anchors. So these are the two pins. Take off the old boots, and you want to wipe the pins off and just put some fresh lube on it. I believe the brake caliper or the brake pads will come with a little lube in it. You can use that, and you don't need very much. You just need a little bit. And just make sure that everything moves freely, and then reassemble it. So here you're going to see me struggle with a little bit. I figured out finally, after trying to get the boot on there, I put the boot on the pin first, and later I find out that it's actually easier to put the boot on the anchor first and then the pin. Now you can put your anti-rattle clips on now or afterwards. It doesn't really matter. What you want to do here is make sure they don't interfere with the rotor. So here's a better view how I have my clips installed. Just like that. Easy peasy. Now grab your 2 bolts and install them on the caliper anchor and tighten these down to specification, which I believe is 80 foot-pounds or so. Now grab your brake pads and go ahead and install them. Just push down on the anti-rattle clips a little bit and they'll slide right in place. You don't have to put anything on these brake pads. Just put them on as they are. So now what you want to do is you're going to depress the caliper pistons back into the calipers. So I have a tool here that is able to do 2 pistons at once. Pretty handy. You can use pretty much anything you want. You can use channel locks with a brake pad and that'll push both of them back at the same time. I forgot where I purchased this tool, but I'm sure you can find this on Amazon or even go to your local parts store. You can probably find something very similar to this. Another thing to pay attention to is look at your caliper piston rubber boots. If they're torn in any way, you might want to consider replacing the calipers themselves. So now position your brake caliper. Be careful not to twist the brake line. So when you're putting this caliper back on, you want to push the pins away from the caliper so you can slide it on with ease. Sometimes they're a little tricky. You're going to see me here messing around with the caliper pins, the sliders a little bit. You just have to find the right spot where they belong in. and you'll be able to get your bolts on. So start these off finger tight. Don't use any power tools or ratchets or anything like that, because you don't want to cross thread these. So just keep pretty much working with it until you get them to thread in by hand. And once you've done that, then you can go ahead and tighten them down with whatever you're using and torque them down to about 50 foot-pounds. So you're basically done now on this side. So you can put your wheel and everything back on if you wanted to. What I want to show you here is I'm going to continue with this video, and I'm going to show you the other side in real time, how difficult sometimes rotors can be to remove. Just remember, when you're hammering away on that rotor, be careful not to damage the wheel studs. So I'm going to show you here. I'll include it in the video coming up here in a second. So this is the right side now, and go crazy with that penetrating oil, and then don't be bashful when you're hitting it with the hammer here. Sometimes it takes a little work. Woo! Baby's on there. Good God. Easy, easy. Don't get too carried away. Just let that penetrate a bit. There we go. There you have it. That one took a little bit of work to get off. So you're basically done with this brake job once you assemble everything, put everything back together. And then just refill it with the recommended brake fluid. It'll usually say on the master cylinder cap or the reservoir itself, it'll tell you what fluid it takes. This one here takes .3 fluid. Just fill her up and then go follow your break-in procedure that was printed in the brake pad box, and you're done with this job. So if you have any questions, feel free to post a comment and I'll try to answer them as quickly as I can. Have a good day, everyone.